for more on startup companies in Southeast Asia. I'm joined by Douglas Abrams. He's the Managing Director of Expara and Expara IDM Ventures. Good to see you, sir, from Singapore. Let's talk about startups, talk about Southeast Asia. I spent some time in Singapore and some of the areas down there, and I can tell you that the number of cranes and construction, it is impressive. But I've never known that startups were so hot. What's going on here?
So definitely, I think Southeast Asia is one of the fastest growing market for startups and venture capital in the world. Over the last few years, we've seen tremendous growth in both investment in startups and in exits of venture-funded companies, which are two of the metrics that we look at to judge the size and growth of a startup market. So to give you some detail around that, if you look at the number of investments in startups and dollars invested in startups, for example, in Singapore in 2014 was about $100 million into 250 startups, just in the seed stage investment. On the exit side, we had about $800 million Sing dollars in exits against historical numbers around 50 million a year. So as we've seen exponential growth in the last few years, both investment in startups and exits of startups.
Douglas, let me ask you this. If you and I were doing a startup, and I said to you, let's make this company, we're going to start a TV show, we're going to call it Global Business America, where in the world should we build this company? Beijing, Singapore, Los Angeles. What are we looking for when we talk about startups and money? Because it's about the money, but it's also about employees as well.
So I think the question was, if I'm a startup looking where to start, where should I locate?
Yes.
I think, startups, I think startups need to locate close to the market. I don't think if you're a, let's say, US-based startup that's targeting the US market, you're going to want to relocate to Southeast Asia to look for funding. But if you're a startup in the US that's thinking about targeting Asia market, then definitely relocating to Asia can be a very attractive option.
My father always says, don't invest in your friends' businesses because you don't want to ruin friendships. But I'm looking at my notes here, and friends is one of the places where you're supposed to go look for money among VC, private equity. So the question is, if we're getting started, who's the best group to hit up first and why?
So as a startup, where should I look for money first? I think typically startups begin funding with what we call OM, which is own money. So startup founders are expected to put their own money into their startup, so they have some skin in the game. Then after that, they'll usually go to what we call the 3 Fs, which are friends, family, and fools, which is a little bit of an investing joke. And then after that, they'll go to angel investors, and then incubators, accelerators, early stage venture capital funds. And then after that, the more traditional venture funds, maybe very late. By the time they go to private equity, they won't really be startups anymore. And also in well-developed enterprise ecosystem markets like Singapore or the US or other markets, they'll also look at some government co-funding. So for example, in Singapore, the government is very active in
they have an extensive
public-private partnership funding for startups, working with.
They have an extensive venture capital
sorry,
account.
Go ahead.
Douglas, I'm sorry we're out of time, but I'm going to borrow that phrase from you, friends, family, and fools. Thank you very much. Have a good weekend there in Singapore.